All right.
Good evening, everybody. And tonight I'm going to be reading again from David Carse's Perfect Brilliant Stillness. I'm going to be looking at two brief chapters and a small excerpt from another. This is first chapter is called Morning Talks, and David Carse visited Ramesh Balkisar in Bombay and attended some talks with him. And he makes reference to them in his book here. He starts this chapter off with a quote from Nisargadatta Maharaj and a quote from another sage. From Nisargadatta comes the quote, "Pure knowledge is not imparted by another. It comes unasked. It is the one that is listening. It is your own true nature." Close quote. The next quote is, "I show the truth to living beings, and then they are no longer living beings."
Who's that?
Feng Shui. People from all over the world come to the morning talks in this living room in Bombay, some of whom have been searching for years and have been with Zen masters, gurus, teachers of all kinds. They have heard of this teacher of pure Advaita and have come with perhaps some expectation, or at least a hope, of finally hearing what they need to hear, the real thing, the teaching which will unveil the ultimate understanding, the final truth, self-realization, total awakening. What they get is a little guy sitting in the corner, going on ad nauseum about this idea of whether or not you are the doer of what you think are your actions. Most of the people who show up don't stay long. After a few sessions, they leave to go home or to go on to another teacher who will talk about more important things. This idea of doership is too mundane, too simple, seems so secondary and irrelevant. Of course, make no mistake, from the point of view of the total understanding, this teaching about whether you are the doer is in fact redundant. The question doesn't even arise. With the understanding comes the natural and spontaneous apperception that there is no one here, no individual to either be the doer or not the doer. So the question is moot. What you think of yourself, the whole package of body, mind, personality, ego, sense of individuality, personal history, none of that even exists as such, as anything other than an idea, a story, a concept in consciousness. The discussion of whether you are or not, you can be a doer is not, as Wei Wu Wei writes, it's like discussing whether the bird in the empty cage is captive. The cage is empty. There's nobody home. At the morning talks recently, there has been a musician who plays traditional Indian flute for the group after the talks. The flute does not know music. It does not know G from B flat. It doesn't know tempo or emphasis, and it cannot make music come out of itself. It's just a hollow bamboo stick with holes in it. It is the musician who has the knowledge and the skill and the intention and the dexterity, and whose breath blows through the instrument and whose fingers manipulate the openings so that beautiful music flows out. When the music is ended, No one congratulates the wooden stick on the music it made. It's the musician who is applauded and thanks for this beautiful gift of music. It's precisely so with what we think of as ourselves. We are instruments, hollow sticks through which the breath, the spirit, the energy, which is presence, all that is, consciousness flows. Just that it is not the flute making the note, but the musician making the note through the instrument, so it is the breath which is presence, which animates this mind and body and comes out through this mouth to make it seem that this mouth is speaking words. The basic misunderstanding, the basic ignorance is this unwitting usurpation of the role of the musician by the instrument. This inversion of truth is spontaneously realized when the understanding occurs. It becomes obvious there is no individual, there is nobody home, no entity here to be the doer or not. Because awakening is simply the understanding that there is no one here to awaken. But this realization happens spontaneously when the understanding occurs. From the point of view of the seeker, you can't get there from here because there is no you. There is no question of getting, and there is no there to get. The intellectual comprehension that there can be no individual entities will not in any way help the average seeker, because in his or her own daily life, there's a deep belief in a personal self, and a personal doership will remain. And with it, the accompanying misery of pride and arrogance, shame and guilt, fear, hatred and malice, all of which arise from the belief that there is someone there to be doing anything. All attempts to extricate oneself from this dilemma only strengthen the sense of individual self of the one apparently making the attempts. There's no way out of this predicament, the paradox, because the one who thinks he or she is in the paradoxical predicament is itself an hallucination, a mind-generated fantasy, the bird in the empty cage. For the rest of your life, you can continue as you have done. You can go to talks and seminars and retreats given by the most enlightened masters and hear wonderful things about enlightenment and total realization and Satchitananda, and have immense spiritual experiences of great beauty. But when you open your eyes, you will be back at the same questions with the same longings, because there will still be you. And so consciousness is stirring the pot with this insidious little teaching about doership, coming through this unassuming little Indian man sitting in a flat in Bombay. Yes, on the surface, it seems insignificant compared to other things you may have heard. It may even seem hard to concentrate on it, when surely there must be something more to it than this. Surely there must be more to look for. And there is. This is not itself the center, but it is a way into the center. And if you let it in, performing the investigation that is suggested and staying with it, and if there is an openness that allows you to take hold, then a truly amazing thing will indeed happen. because this teaching that appears to be relatively insignificant can be, small as it is, the little key which, if allowed into the lock and allowed to turn, will swing open the vast gates. Quote, I am not the doer of any action, close quote. The significance of this is not that in any great or total realization in itself, the significance lies in where it will lead. If you really get this, really get that there is no one to get it, it will be like a line of computer code, which when introduced into the computer will rewrite the whole operating system, will cause a cascade failure of all the systems that you think of as yourself, will set in motion the surrender which otherwise can in no way be achieved by a you, and which is the complete understanding of awakening, the knowing that there is no one here to understand or awaken or know. There is only the peace that paths understanding, the breath of presence blowing through this hollow stick. And the music thus made, which appears as the everyday thoughts and words and actions of you and others, is nothing other than presence playing through these instruments, and truly is the ultimate gift beyond beauty. In the case of what I have come to call with some affection the David thing, the irreducible core of the understanding was expressed in the first thought which formed when there was that sudden shift of perception, and it was clearly seen that there's nobody home, close quote. There is presence, being, consciousness. There is this apparent body-mind in which and as which presence streams, functions, experiences, and that is all. There is no separate individual self or entity or person except as a mere thought construct. And so the expression here necessarily revolves around this basis and returns always to this, that it is the sense of individual self that is the illusion, the bondage, the essential endarkenment. When this illusory sense of individual self is seen through, falls away, then there is simply what is. There is awakening from the dream of separate individual selfhood. What is awakened to, what is understood, is only one. Yet each occurrence in a body-mind instrument is different, according to the infinite variables in the programming and conditioning of each instrument, and in the script or part or destiny each plays in the infinite unfolding in consciousness. Each has a different flavor, a different emphasis. If the understanding is a house, some come in through the front door, some the back, some enter through the windows, perhaps slipping in unnoticed, or perhaps smashing the window and setting off all the alarms. One may come down the chimney, another tear through the roof shingles one by one. One may fall from a great height and crash through the roof and land on the floor in a pile of dust and debris, while yet another, his hat in his hand, offers it to the butler as he steps from the porch into the parlor. And these different manners in which it occurs will lend a different feel, different color, different flavor to the expression, the description of the one taste. The way Ramesh talks about the understanding and the way Tony Parsons talks about presence are quite different, have a very different tone. Wayne Lickerman says you have no choice. Ganjaji says all you have is choice. They are all pointing to exactly the same thing, all part of the infinite unfolding of totality. In form and expressing, the teaching is never the same twice, yet always the understanding itself is not two. All the pointers are toward what is. This next brief chapter is called Not Taxi. It starts with a quote from Adyashanti. There is presence that is unnameable, which thought cannot touch. It is not your possession. It is what you are. And then a quote by Suzuki Roshi. What we call I is just a swinging door, which moves when we inhale and when we exhale. It just moves. That is all. There is nothing. No I, no world, no mind or body, just a swinging door. Wherever you go in Bombay, there are desperately poor and dirty, the beggars who reach up from the places on the street or in the gutter where they live and sleep, pulling at your pant leg, or the more able-bodied following you, asking, pleading for help, for a few rupees. Many hang out at the street intersections, and when traffic stops at a red light, they approach your taxi, bare feet, torn clothing, dirty hands extended in through the windows, pleading eyes. One day, returning from the morning talk at Ramesh's apartment, one such beggar, more pathetic than most, approached the open back window as the taxi came to a stop in traffic. I looked out to see an Indian man, hardly 4.5 feet tall. His eyes were on a level with mine, where I sat in the tiny, ancient Padmini. He had no arms, but from one shoulder grew a hand, which rested on the door of the car, palm upward, as his face pressed inward toward mine. His head and shoulders and face were deformed as well, hunched and misshapen. He showed the scars and filth and abuse of a life on the streets, and his mouth moved with a barely audible litany of pleading and supplication, well practiced from a lifetime, until his eyes caught mine, and then he stopped. Everything stopped. And there we stayed, our faces hardly 2 feet apart, staring into each other's eyes. There are such moments in which nothing happens, in which it is suddenly clear that what appears to be happening is not, and what is happening can only appear as no thing. The roles stopped. His begging routine stopped completely, and there was no move to give him a coin. Both forms went completely empty and still, and the boundaries evaporated. It is difficult to describe the sense that is experienced in these moments. Whatever feeling might have been starting to arise stopped, and there was no pity, no anguish, no aversion, no awkwardness or discomfort, hardly even compassion. As I looked at him, it was clear I was staring at myself and clear that I was staring at God. The twisted physical form of this beggar seemed so transparent, stretched so shimmeringly thin in the heat of the tropical city, and the brilliance streaming through him and around him so visible that it was impossible not to see him and the street scene behind him as dream forms, and the light of the brilliance as the obvious underlying reality unable to be hidden. In that moment, there was a sense of intense, neutral quietness. As our eyes stared into each other, there was nothing to do, nothing to say, nothing to feel, nothing to think. As the taxi pulled away, I turned to my friend sitting next to me, perhaps to express something of what happened or to ask what she had seen. But there was no coherent thoughts and no words. And when we turned back to look, there was no sign of the small, misshapen human form anywhere. A couple of days later at the morning talks, I was asked essentially, what would happen to the understanding if David were not so well off? My thoughts immediately went to the armless beggar and the many others I have encountered living, sleeping, wandering the streets of Bombay, and to the sense of intense stillness that occurs in those moments. I had not put it into words or thought. I had fumbled with it once or twice, as in the taxi that time when I had turned to my friend, but I couldn't articulate it. Now came the realization that that question, that problem, only arises if there is identification as one of the body-mind organisms. If there is identification as a body-mind, then the whole thought process arises. Oh my God, I, in quotes, am so lucky. I am so well off. I am so comfortable. And this poor guy is in a hard way. I feel bad. I feel terrible. I have to do something about this. Or conversely, if the situation is reversed, I have heard, I have it hard. I don't have what I need or want, and these other people have more than I do. I need to do something, or better yet, one or all of them need to do something to help me. It's all driven by the I sense of individual self and comparison with other apparent selves. But when there is non-identification as one of those apparent individuals, then simply all this is happening. In one body mind is arising happiness. In another body mind is happening poverty. In this one, anger. In this one, wealth and hatred. In another, disease and peace. In another, perfect health and complete boredom. Infinite combinations of attributes and experiencing in these billions of body minds. One of these body minds is this one, but it really doesn't matter. Intellectually or emotionally, this can seem a difficult, tricky subject. It really doesn't matter sounds about as politically incorrect as anything can. It seems an easy thing to say, sitting here in comfort? Would the same thought be occurring in this body mind if it was the one living on the streets of Bombay? And the only answer is that whatever thought occurs is the thought that arises in consciousness in each body mind in each moment. It simply cannot be approached either intellectually or emotionally. Both of these responses of the individual and these boundaries do not exist except as illusory and temporary props. In the understanding, the boundaries simply dissolve. Awakening has occurred in beggars and in kings. Many beggars and many kings remain unenlightened in the dream. In reality, it doesn't matter. This time, on the way back to the hotel, the taxi driver wanted to practice his English. I wasn't paying much attention, reading something I had been given, until at one point he had been quiet a while, and I looked up to see him watching me in the rearview mirror. Looking at me intently, he said distinctly, "I not taxi, I driving," with the emphasis on the participle ing, an enunciation of pure non-duality worthy of a master, like something right out of Wee Woo Wee. Not the apparent entity that you think you are, but the functioning, the happening. Yes, my friend, you are indeed.
Well, that was great.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed that. I'll have to listen to that again when you put it up on YouTube.
Well, I think it goes to this central idea of the illusion that we're all caught up in, and the emphasis put on this teaching, especially David Carse, this idea of disidentifying, of seeing through the illusion, seeing that there's no one here, just the functioning. All is happening just as it is a perfect unfolding of consciousness.
Well, that's what he's pointing to when he says there's only the what is. And so with only the what is, there really is no thinking about it. There's no thought about it. It's only what is at that moment. And what is at that moment is you are the instrument through which consciousness or presence passes. And when there is no I, then there is no thought passing. So when he was face to face with the beggar, it was a looking without the looker, without the me.
Exactly.
So it was really consciousness looking at itself.
Right.
And but however, he also says here that we are so identified with this body mind that it's really difficult to free ourselves of that identification, because with that identification comes the identity of a center, of a me, that's part of this body mind.
Mm-hmm.
But if one is able to disidentify with that, and see yourself, seeing yourself, and having a realization that you are just an instrument through which presence passes. So there really is no doer, no personal I doing.
Yeah. I wanted to read this also, another a brief mention he makes. In the beginning of his book, The Final Truth, Ramesh writes, the final truth cannot be accepted unless the mind is empty of the me.
Right.
And the heart is full of love. And a few days ago in our conversation, he told me, David, do you want to know how to live life? Let it be. Let it happen. Everything that everyone is doing, quote unquote, let it happen. Be still. Do, in quotes, whatever you, in quotes, want. And don't bother about the world. Be still. Be still means don't think. You see, it's so simple.
Yeah, but you have to be careful with that, because do what you want and don't worry about the world can be interpreted as a total self-centered selfishness. And that isn't what he means.
Of course not.
Um,
And it doesn't mean don't think about concrete realities of your life. It means don't think about the me.
well, there's
Don't,
nothing,
don't entertain the me in thought.
but that's just it. And without the me, then one is face to face with the what is of the moment. And the what is not only what's going on inside your own self, but what's going on around you in this, if you want to call it a dream, all the characters in this dream, those that are suffering, those that are joyful, because you're part of that. That's the idea of non-duality. You are not a separate individual. You are part of this big picture. You are part, you are that presence. That's passing through all these other instruments. You are really not separate. But it feels like you're separate when life presents a challenge to you, right?
I thought it was interesting when he said, would I be able to be on this path if it wasn't for the fact that I have so much material wealth and those kinds of things to start with? That when he's looking at the beggar, he wonders if the beggar has the same opportunity for enlightenment that he has. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting also, he says here, and so it's precisely so with us. When he made the analogy to the flute, what we think of ourselves, we are instruments, hollow sticks through which the breath, the spirit, the energy, which is presence, all that is, consciousness flows. Just as it is not the flute making the note, but the musician making the note through the instrument, so it is the breath, which is presence, which animates this body and mind and comes out through this mouth to make it seem this mouth is speaking words. Presence. Breathing through animating.
Well, that's the consciousness. And it's interesting because there is awareness of all this. So that's
Yeah, there was the your very first reading, first chapter was Shinryu Suzuki saying that all we are is just a swinging gate.
mhm,
Much of like what you're saying about the body mind.
mhm,
That's all there is. It's just a swinging gate.
right, right. So how, well, I don't even know if how is the word, but we are so conditioned to being identified with this body mind. And the teaching of non-duality is saying, in essence, wake up. That is not who you really are. That's who you think you are, but that's not who and what you really are. So how do we know this for ourselves? Because it's got to be a direct experience. Otherwise, it's just another theory. Well, the direct experience is that of awareness, right? There is awareness of the body. There is awareness of the mind. There is awareness of the thoughts and the feelings and the breath. And so you cannot be that which you can see. And one sees all this. So what is the actuality? What is the actuality of every moment? When we don't identify as a me with this body mind, but if we're able to switch the perception into non-conceptual awareness, absolute awareness.
Well, you know, his favorite catchphrase is "There's nobody home." So if you sit quietly and there is no movement of thought, is there anybody home in that stillness? Is there an independent entity in that stillness, outside that stillness? If you really sit quietly and there's no movement of thoughts, however briefly that may be, is there a me present?
No, there is no me independent of thought.
Right. And, you know, there is something freeing about the the reality that everything is unfolding
Mm.
naturally, spontaneously.
Right.
You know, the whole
Mhm.
phenomenal display
Mhm.
is happening as a natural unfolding in consciousness.
Right.
And all the innumerable attributes and combinations that come up in mind-body organisms. All the flavors, he was saying.
Yeah. And that paragraph about who's in poverty, who's in wealth, who has suffered a tragedy, who has something, what we consider wonderful happening. It's all just unfolding. And yeah, when there truly is no longer an identification as a me, then is there even suffering?
Just to see the whole phenomenal display as what he says is the perfect brilliant stillness outpouring.
Mm.
Outpouring.
Mm. Mm.
Consciousness expressing itself. And it's an awkward way to put it. Consciousness doesn't do anything, but
No,
the
I think
expression of consciousness.
awareness doesn't do anything, but I think consciousness is moving. Awareness doesn't move. I just I just want to add this
Go-
one paragraph
Sure.
by Krishnamurti in this wonderful book of his called The Only Revolution. He says here, we have no light within ourselves. We have the artificial light of others, the light of knowledge, the light that talent and capacity give. All this kind of light fades and becomes a pain. The light of thought becomes its own shadow. But the light that never fades, the deep inward brilliance, which is not a thing of the marketplace, cannot be shown to another. You can't seek it. You can't cultivate it. You can't possibly imagine it or speculate upon it, for it is not within the reach of the mind. So he too is talking about this brilliance, this light that has not to do with the mind, and the mind is the me.
Right.
And every other light that we call upon, or every other light that we know of, is all mind-made stuff, which has its own validity and importance. But in the world of non-duality, there is this perfect, as he says, brilliant stillness, this light that is not of the mind, that is not of the me, and therefore is not personal. And that's what makes it non-dual. There is no darkness opposite that light. It's non-dual.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe unrelated, but when I was in South Africa, the people I was staying with at the Airbnb in Pretoria, they were actually quite interested in non-duality. And they actually wanted me to talk a little bit more about it, because Vimpy, the husband, he's a bit of a philosopher himself. And so when I was talking about non-duality, I was sort of saying, well, you do sort of an inventory, and you look at your thoughts and you say, am I my thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
And you look at feelings and say, is this who I am, my feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Or what about my beliefs or my ideas, opinions, all these sort of things? Is this who I am?
Right.
And I said, when you ask yourself all the time, you see that none of those phenomena are permanent. They just come and they go, and that can't be essentially who we are.
Right.
And then I was talking about feelings. I said, feelings are important, but we just don't want to identify ourselves with the feelings that we're having, whether it's shame or anger, or I'm just always a joyful person, or whatever the feeling may be. That's not really who we are either. But yet I know that feelings are really, really valuable and very important. Even the memories of our children as babies, things like that create this sort of love in us.
Mm.
So I just want to get, what your take is on feelings, emotions, memories of your children, things like that.
It's all very nice and it's all very sweet. And it's fine, but it's mind stuff.
Mm.
And that's okay when there's a realization that that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because, right, you can have memories of your children that are sad, that are terrifying, that are painful. And of course, memories that are joyful, but they're memories.
I think they can be either delightful or upsetting momentary experiences. They can come up and be enjoyed and let go if they come up, or they can come up and create a wave of upsetment, and that can be let go. They're passing phenomena.
Yeah.
And
but
if
isn't there something about our humanity that says that, yes, that as a human being, I make up stories.
Yes.
I cherish memories as a child, or my own children's events when I was raising them. And I'm wondering if we don't disconnect ourselves somehow from our own humanity sometimes, if we follow this thread too far to its conclusion.
However, if we're really in the moment with what is, whatever that what is at that moment, then there's a richness to it, an aliveness to it, a fullness to it that goes beyond memory. It has not to do with memory. It's the what is in the moment. And when we think of love, can there be a love that has not to do with mind, me, and thought? What is the quality of that love? That the non-dual love, which opposite is not hate, just pure love that has no opposite. And so it's not mind stuff at all. And do we need memory for that? Or is that just what is in the moment? And being fully present with it in the moment.
I guess if I have some of these fond memories, I don't want to censor myself and say, Bill, you can't have these fond memories.
Oh, no,
That's
no,
mine stuff.
no,
That,
no, you wouldn't want to do that because that's the me that's coming in and saying, don't do that. That's only mine stuff.
Mm.
So no, a memory comes up, a loving, pleasant memory, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Of course.
But I can see it as a passing phenomenon and not identify with it. That's the trick. You know,
That's not real.
from whence does a memory of a pleasant experience come? We don't know. It's consciousness arising in this body mind as a memory. So if it comes up and I see it and it has a pleasant feeling, so be it, as long as I don't dwell on it and I let it go. A lot of thoughts come up and are random and seem to have no rhyme or reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because what if a painful memory arises?
Well, they're only, I think,
Do I want to keep that?
no, I don't want to keep any of them because the holding on to them or identifying with them strengthens me as a personal story.
Right.
That's the danger. So I just want to see them as passing phenomenon.
Yeah.
Some enjoyable and some are not so enjoyable, but I don't want to hold on to either one of them. They come up and they go.
And that's the what is in the moment.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's that moment. Yeah, time to stop. Well, so next week or next time you're going to do Krishnamurti,
The
perhaps.
next time.
Next time. We don't know
Yes,
when.
I'm not sure yet when, but the next time for sure.
Okay, good. And we'll give Carse a rest and maybe come back to it at another time. It's like he said, we want to have different flavors.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's very delicious.
Okay, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
I'll say it for Ugo. Buonasera.
Yeah, yeah.
Buonasera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for everything.
Good night.